Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, you won't meet another woman like this, who looks like this, who's in this industry. She is in NASCAR. Yes, a woman in NASCAR. That is unique. Even more unique, she's an owner of a team, and she is a Black woman, African-American woman, whatever pleases you on the PC crew. But I have today Melissa Harville-Lebron. You've seen her on Ebony. You've seen her on Black Enterprise. You've probably seen her on Sway in the Morning, and this is 50. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, we can see, and you've had so much press as a publicist. Congratulations to your publicist that you've been getting the word out there, even though like in NASCAR, everyone tries to say, hey, we're still growing. We have, we're building our team. We're qualifying for races and that, but that you've gotten probably more press for being a woman, especially the first Black woman to own a NASCAR. I mean, how does this feel? Just, all of this.
I never imagined that it would grow into what it's grown into. So just to be clear, I'm the first African-American woman to solely own a NASCAR team. There have been other females of color who have been involved in the sport through their spouses or through a charity and a business partnership. But I am the first sole owner. I own my team 100%, no husbands, no partners. My team was developed for my two sons, Eric and Nico LeBron. That's where you get the E squared, which is truly the name of the team, but we call it E2 just because it makes it easier. But this journey has been incredible. I'm always completely amazed by how my music background brought me to this opportunity. And, never in a million years could I have ever written this down and said, you know what, I'm going to be involved in NASCAR, a Southern male Caucasian sport, and, really making some inroads in the sport and, really teaching my children firsthand about generational wealth and ownership, because this is how it truly all started. So I'm thankful for God for blessing me and finding favor over our lives to even put us on this path.
And, we'll get into your music career, but even more, I think, inspiring is that before doing music, you were working as a correctional officer in New York, and everyone knows that cannot be an easy thing anywhere. But talk about
actually, my career started in music. I was an intern at Sony, worked at Epic under the Vice President of Promotion and Publicity, Laverne Perry. And I did not like the politics of the music industry back in the 80s. So I decided that it was time for me, well, I should say the 80s, early 90s. And I decided that I needed some job stability since I wasn't willing to play the politic game in the industry. And I went to New York City Department of Corrections, and I met my husband about 2 years into the job, got married, started my family. And before I knew it, I was 10 years in. But I had never left the music industry ever. I have produced college tours. I have managed artists. I have executive produced projects. So music has always been my first passion. I started out as a video girl, worked my way up to a production assistant with Dwayne Hayward Productions, worked on Roxanne Shantae's video. I've done a number of things within the industry myself as an artist. But that was never my love. That was never my passion. I always loved playing the background and being the one that orchestrated and created the business opportunities and executed the business plan. But that just was not my path when I was at Epic. And I decided to leave and, get what they call a real job with some benefits and stability. And then, life just had its own path for me for a moment. And once I retired from New York City Department of Corrections as a supervisor, I went full-fledged back into the music industry once I felt better because I had gotten injured. And it took me about a year or so, 2 years to get back on my feet. And then I just hit the road, running. I had a very nice security blanket underneath me. And I just felt like, once I had recovered from my illness somewhat, well, I should say I was stable. I felt like, nothing could stop me. And I just went back to the music business wholeheartedly. And this opportunity presented itself, and it just bridged an opportunity. And we've been running ever since.
What a story. So you were even doing music yourself and collaborating. Now, where can we see? Now we have YouTube and all these things, Spotify. Where can we go grab your tracks?
I am a dinosaur, okay? So my career, I was about, 16. I did, Request Line music video. I've done a song called Love Patrol under Jay Ellis was the producer. He actually produced Gloria Gaynor. Loved Into Me. Oh my God. You really got me telling my age here. Well, I'm proud of it. I'll be 50 in a matter of about 10 days. So God has blessed me with that as well. But yeah, I've gone from being a video girl and video girls are not what they are today. We had our clothes on. You see us dancing, you see us dancing, but yeah, none of the craziness and nudity that goes on today. But yeah, I remember Tracy was a superstar back then. She was the video girl that everybody wanted in their video was Tracy. But yeah, my God, that was the early 80s. That was like 85, 86, 87.
Now I'm looking online.
Some of y'all weren't even born yet.
I was, and I'm looking for Love Patrol, and I'm not finding it. Is this on YouTube or Spotify for the people?
No, what you'll find on YouTube you'll find my video with B-Fat, Do the WAP.
Okay.
I'm actually dancing in that video. Oh my goodness, you got me exposing my skeletons.
So I'm going to tell you out there listening, I am going to try to get her music and have her put it out there, because what a story. And it really shows, and that will inspire. And that's what this is about, is inspiring that 14-year-old who's listening, who may not have all the money or any connections or no money, but saying, this is what I did and this is how you can do it too, by just hard work. There's no secret.
Yeah, being passionate, right? Being passionate about it. And I would always tell them, protect your future self. I do a lot of public speaking. And I, going out to these schools, I was invited to join an amazing support organization called Parents Against Bullying. And we go out and speak to young children, young girls specifically, about protecting their future self. You don't know who you're going to become in 5 years, in a year, 10 years, 20 years. And you want to protect that opportunity, that you don't close those opportunities off because you're being impulsive now, or, you want to do the cool thing, or you want to follow behind everybody else. To really focus on protecting the future you.
And so to go from, I didn't want to play the game, and it's interesting depending on where you're playing the game, 80s, 90s, everything shifted, then 2000, everything's bling, bling. But when you even go to different places in the world, they call them video vixens, and it sounds even worse, but it's not what we think, because it is actually the girls who are the highlights in the video. They're the main girl. They're not even dancing. They're the one that the artist is talking to. That's the vixen.
Mm-hmm.
But, how they're dressed is how they can be dressed, some naked, some clothed, but it's just, how things shift in language is. When you were in...
Oh, definitely.
When you were in, and this is someone who's worked in mental health and psych wards asking, as well as entertainment like yourself, when you were in the New York Correctional Facility, did you ever try to recruit any talent and say, hey, I hear you, you got something?
No,
no,
I didn't.
Okay.
Well, I too and even in Department of Corrections, I worked in the mental observation unit. I ran the mental observation unit. My guys came from Bellevue and Mid-Hudson, psych. So, I always kept the two separate. Even with artists, there were some talented officers, but I was there to do a job. I really didn't want people getting too involved in my personal life because there just has to be a certain line when you're within that environment, and not everybody's your friend. And to invite people into your personal space can be a little dangerous, depending on what that person's intentions are. So I always kept them separate. Not too many people knew what I was doing outside of New York City Department of Corrections.
Okay, and I asked that because there's especially then and even now, the streets and the jail, kind of there's a connection to
Definitely.
into the music industry. People say, man, how do you do the music industry? I say, well, first get a goon squad, because you might need a little protection.
Right. Yes. Make sure you get your money from those janky promoters.
Oh, up front now. If you can't we can't cash app it. Nah, don't come through. PayPal, wire.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Immediate.
And there's been correctional officers, and I've spoken to them, not on this show, but on other shows, about, they were doing straight up all wrong, had to go to prison themselves, and then, they write a book. So I was just wondering if you were able to ever, be pulled in, because when you work in a jail, even if you volunteer in a jail, they're always asking for a favor, and you have to say no, or you have to say yes to everybody.
I was consistent. I was very consistent. I've never been assaulted in my entire 20 years in the department, even running that specialized unit. It was about consistency. My inmates, once I took my first post as a captain in the mental observation unit, that's where I stayed. And I had a rapport with my guys. They knew that if there was an issue, that they could speak to me, and if they were entitled to it, they would get it. Same thing with my officers. If my officers were entitled to it, they would get it. If I said no, that is what I meant. There was no backstepping on it because, I'm cool with you and we had dinner, or, we went to the office Christmas party together. It was none of that. If I said no, that's exactly what I meant. One thing about me, I always tried to be an educator to my officers and also to my inmates, and let them know why I'm saying no and what were some alternatives to what they asked me for. So my job was always, I would say, it was a highlight for me because I enjoyed, being a supervisor in Rikers Island. I knew that I was on the front line, and that my job, it was not about just, being a disciplinarian. It was also about being an educator and being of assistance. And my stat numbers were very low for assault on staff. I've never had a major incident, never had a suicide attempt,
wow.
Never a major melee. And I think that's because I was always a hands-on supervisor. And I took great pride in that, knowing that, if my inmates had an issue, they would come to me before they resorted to a fight, because they knew if they had a fight or if somebody got hurt, I was going to tear that house apart and their life would no longer be what it was before they made that decision. So I had a rapport of being fair and consistent, and definitely had an open ear for someone that wanted to talk. Because sometimes those issues were very minute. It could be the inmate needed toilet paper. He didn't feel good. He didn't get to go to sick call. He needed to speak to the psych because he hadn't heard from his family. I mean, sometimes they were things that were an easy remedy to them, and other things that had to be referred to. So I made it a point to always be accessible to my staff and to my inmates. And I think that's why my tenure there ran as smoothly as it did. And I can honestly say I've never been assaulted ever.
That's you need an award for that. And that is so of the opposite.
Decorated. I've been highly decorated in the department. I have.
Because if you would base, Rikers Island off Gary Hayward's book, you'd be like, hold on, it was all type of, nonsense and,
Oh
so
no,
many.
there was some craziness. Listen, you could find trouble anywhere you go.
Mm,
If some people are magnet to it, and some people avoid it like the plague. And yeah, there were things going on, but that was not what was going on in my unit. Like, I was hands on, and I tried to curb behaviors as much as I could. If there was a female officer trying to come into my area that was not assigned to my area, to go and try to visit an inmate, she knew right away Captain LeBron was not here for that. Do it on somebody else's tour. Do not come through my area.
wow. Wow. I love to hear it. And so then to, still dabble in the music and
Mm-hmm.
do your job. It's almost like it's your release. I think probably one of the questions that I have not seen you be, answered is, how do you make that transition? And is it correctional money? Is it investment money? Is it music money? Because NASCAR,
It was
I have,
both. It was
it
both.
was both.
NASCAR is expensive. It is. My dad was in investment banking. My dad still to this day, he has Alzheimer's, the beginning stages, but he still is a day trader, as much as he can. So my dad taught me from very young to take the money that I make and invest it back into myself. Again, creating and protecting the future you. And Department of Corrections afforded me a very, very comfortable lifestyle. I was a top earner in my facility, and I used my money wisely. I would tell people, I said, I have a very nice home. And when I first got it, I was driving, not to take anything away from a Honda Accord, but the car did not match the house. And they'd be like, well, why didn't you buy a nicer car? I said, it's not what you drive, it's where you park it.
Mm-hmm. Real talk. Real talk. But with that, and someone listening right now would say, wait, she did all this in New York, and we know that New York had its ups and downs, and the economy, and right now it's up. But how did you do it? What did you invest in that someone else now could say, wait, maybe I need to follow her because I got eyelashes like that. I got, I got the hair. I look like that. And at 50, still looking like I'm, 25, 30 years younger, and nobody can tell my age. So what were the investments? Was it stocks?
So my stock portfolio consisted of pharmaceuticals and beverage companies and typical products that you would use every day in your home. The pharmaceuticals are huge business. They make a ton of money based off of us being sick. And doing some research, I saw that, the beverages with the high sugar content, tend to produce, of course, more diabetic people. And the pharmaceutical business thrives off of cancer and diabetes. And unfortunately, it is profitable. I invest a lot in commercial real estate. I like to get in on the ground floor with some neighborhoods that are transitioning, and they're good buy. So there you have it.
And that's something that many people can get involved in. So I hope,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Anybody can get involved in it. And you don't even need to have perfect credit. You just have to be able to have a down payment and be able to either pool your money together, which is a great resource. It's just you need to know who you're doing business with, and document it. I tell everybody, I don't care what it is. I believe in black and white. Yeah, we can be friends, break bread, break bread. You gotta excuse me. This concussion pops up every now and then because I'm recuperating from a severe concussion. I fell and cracked my head. But handle it as it's a business transaction. And a business transaction, you're an entity and they're an entity, and you need to protect yourself. And the only way to protect yourself is to have some boundaries in place in writing. So there's nothing that I don't do business-wise that I do not follow that first rule. And that is, we must do paperwork, period.
Yes, very important. And this when you had told me even in the text about the concussion, I said I wonder if she got behind one of the cars and tried not just to be an owner but then a driver. I
I
was
drive.
you do
I do
drive.
drive.
See,
I'm a little thick in the hips. I'm trying to get rid of this weight now because I would love to drive my son's their last amateur race in late models with them. So I'm trying to lose the weight now, but no, it was a household accident. Like plenty of people lose their lives in household accidents. And I just slipped on some ice at the end of my driveway and fell and knocked myself out. And I've been experiencing some speech issues, which are getting better, some cognitive issues that are definitely getting better. So we are making an improvement. But it was a struggle in the beginning. It was very hard for me to formulate a sentence and concentrate and be able to articulate myself because it just seemed like everything just was like, you remember the alphabet cereal where, you might see a word, but chances are it's just a whole bunch of letters all bunched up together in milk. And that's what it felt like, trying to formulate a sentence. It was extremely difficult. So even now, I try to limit how much I do speak because after a while, it will produce a headache. And, then, I'm off again. So I try to limit how much activity I do now because it can have, an adverse effect on me.
wow. And I would not have known, and I'm sure many people would not have known, but that goes into another, step of business of if something does happen to me, then who can step in? And you're in a very,
Right.
you're in a very relational business. So what
Correct.
steps have you
Mm-hmm.
done to, say, if not me, go to E Square or go to, whomever?
Well, everything would always resort back to my two sons because the team was created for my two sons.
Mhm.
And I tell them, all the time, I said, I'm going to build it where it is undeniable. And then you guys are going to take over. Because guess what? I would like to enjoy my retirement. As of March, I will have been retired from New York City Department of Corrections 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So there is definitely life after retirement, but I do not intend to work every single day. And I feel like I have not accomplished much in NASCAR, though people tell me, you've made history. And I say, that's wonderful and I'm humbled by it, but I don't feel like I've done enough. When I can employ and create a job that somebody can go out and purchase a home for the first time, or I can, give to an organization that can keep food on the table or keep children from going into foster care because they're able to stay in a conducive environment, then I feel like I've accomplished something. When I can help somebody with their illness, and all these things are possible now, but not on the grand scale that I would like to be able to do them on. And I get angry with people that are in place to do this because they forget where they come from. They forget what the struggle was like. They get into these, titles and these beautiful homes and islands and palatial mansions, and drive these multi-million-dollar cars. But what are you doing for your core? What are you doing for your fan base? What are you doing for that fan that has been loyal to you, but they can't pay a month of their tuition, pay their tuition. Like there's only but so much clothing and pocketbooks and shoes and chains and watches and cigars and, nights out at the club that you could do when that one little effort could change somebody's life. And it does not cost a lot.
It doesn't cost a lot, but it shows. And I mean, history has shown us before we were even here that someone can have so much and give
And have nothing at all, to be honest.
Yes, and that's just man. It seems because you don't have to come from a bad environment to see. I live in Seattle.
No.
I live in Seattle, and where we have more boats, they say per capita, blah, blah, West Coast. You see all these boats. I like to go boating. I have my license, but then you see the homeless situation, people on tents and freeways with
Yes.
their family. And
Yes.
it's like, and when you try to fight these things, there are powers that be that like
That's true.
yeah. And so we said, where do we, I have to find my tribe, Melissa, wherever I'm at. And I have found being out of the country that a lot of times I find work that I can do even here, but I can be out. And I'm safe to be out of the country, and I feel safe, but you can still do the work and you can meet your tribe and they'll say, yes, let's do that. And there's books like Give Work, where she went all around the world to Africa and everywhere else to do the gig economy, where people can do simple tasks even on their computer, on their phones. And she died before 40, but she did so much work. And that book Give Work is just such a
you gotta send me the title to it. I'll look it up.
I would definitely. I'll send it to
you. I feel like when God blesses you with a platform, that platform should be used to encourage and inspire, honestly, to pay it forward, pay your opportunity forward to somebody less fortunate. You don't know how, and I'll tell you a situation that I experienced that changed my life around. You don't know how just that kind gesture will turn somebody's life around. So back in the 80s, when I was doing the videos and stuff like that, I was cutting out from school. Like, I was the worst high school student there was. They had told me I could not re-register in school no more. Like, this was it. Like, I had hit pay dirt at that point. It was like, no more. Don't even ask. You either come to school and get your high school diploma this time, or guess what? Go find a GED program. And I was busy, doing videos and partying, and I wasn't thinking about school. I was helping my mom with my youngest siblings, but on the weekends it was my time, and my time turned into Monday, turned into Tuesday, turned into Wednesday. Before I knew it, I wasn't going to school. And it was a teacher that called, and she changed my life. That was the pivoting moment for me, because she was like, why are you not coming to school? When you do decide to show up, you do exceptionally well in your testing, which is, phenomenal. She said, but you don't come to school. And she's like, why? And I'm like, I couldn't tell her, I was home helping my mother take care of my sisters and brothers. And then, after that, then I wanted to go party, and her taking time out of her schedule to call and find out why I wasn't going to school touched me in such a way that I was determined from that day on that I was going to go back and get my high school diploma. And I did. And I went to my guidance counselor, and, he said, you know what? You're finally graduating. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I could not wait to go find this teacher. She was actually in the teacher's lounge, and I got in, and I approached her, and she was eating. She didn't remember me, but it was okay. But I wanted her to know that what she had done for me, even though it was her job to do it, it made a difference in my life. I did summer school. I did summer night school.
Wow.
I was determined to get my high school diploma. And she was a little arrogant, like I was bothering her, eating her lunch, but I wanted her to know, you made a difference in my life. No, and I never looked back.
What a story. I feel that story because I struggle, and I think that the curriculum in the schools now, they have all these type of, not alternative for bad, but alternative where you can be more artsy, more creative on your terms. But that's
I was just lazy. I was just lazy and didn't feel like getting up to go to school. And if my mother needed me to do something for one of my siblings, I was home to do it.
but that laziness, but that laziness, if they maybe told you, hey, you can learn about the music industry in school, you might have jumped up and been the first one there.
I might have. I doubt it.
Well, you know yourself better than I. I'm trying to give you an out and say that's why you got to.
I was a bad high school student. I did not want to get up early in the morning. I'm still not an AM person. I do not touch my office until about 10, 11 o'clock. Either I'm up very, very early, or I try to sleep until at least 9. But it really depends on my day. So the best thing for me to do was to become a boss.
Yeah, well, yeah, and have a system. But that
Right.
so you're talking about this story, and I'm just saying a book. I also want you to talk about the show potential that you guys are discussing now. But is there a book on your way with your story so you can inspire those?
I have been approached. Of course, we'd be looking for a great partnership. I personally don't feel like I've done enough. But yeah, it's a thought, and it will happen at the right time when I have more than just this to write about. You know, um, and people tell me your backstory is amazing. And that would inspire somebody, just knowing that you didn't come from a silver spoon and this and that. And I said, I came from a I wouldn't say really, a working class family that did very well. I'll say that. But I came from a broken home. My mother and my father divorced when I was very young. And, it was the 80s. And I had a parent that got heavily involved in drugs, which put a lot of responsibility on me, because we didn't want them to find out that my parent wasn't in the home. Um, so I experienced a lot of the things that are typical within our culture. Even the mental illness, there was a mental illness component to it as well with my family member. But my grandmother was the matriarch of the family, and my grandmother only had 6 days of education, but she believed in go out there and get it. And when she passed away, she owned 17 multifamily dwellings across the country with 6 days of education. So nobody can't say that you are incapable if you don't have an education. It's nice, but it does not define who you are.
Wow, and you definitely have enough for a book. No one said you have to stop at one. So when people are asking for that book, they're saying don't deprive us of the jewels and the keys, and book, YouTube, influencer, speaker, all that. I mean, that's in you. What can you talk a little about? The TV show that is.
I'm so excited about that because people will get an opportunity to see my boys and all the craziness that I live with my boys. And then me being a single parent, trying to raise an extended family. And then I have my dad that lives at home with me that has Alzheimer's. One of my children, well, two of my children one has, I'll say, a more severe case of mental illness. Where our children will easily be diagnosed as attention deficit or something like that. They never stop past scratching that surface and wanting to apply that label to find out what the core problem is with the children, our children. Sometimes it can be diet, sometimes it can be a chemical imbalance, and sometimes it's just simply the onset of mental illness as a young child. But you have to invest the time, and it can be quite difficult.
What's going on with this?
I'm back.
It could be quite difficult. Is the last thing.
Yeah, it could be quite difficult maneuvering within the mental health treatment realm. I would say that it's quite difficult because they are quick to want to attach a label, but not tell you where it comes from. What can you do to stabilize this child? Because you're dealing with them approaching puberty, which that's a hormonal situation all its own. But typically, a child can be diagnosed with schizophrenia as early as 13. That is typical textbook age for the onset of schizophrenia, which is quite young.
Yeah, yeah.
But they don't like to attach the label to it until they reach the age of 13. So they could be experiencing all type of conduct disorders, all types of issues, but they will not attach an actual diagnosis of schizophrenia until they are 13.
And if I'm not mistaken, we have some healthcare businesses, but they are fully ran, or we help support them as a firm. But my wife is a physician, and there's some reasons for that, there's politics and different legal reasons why they do that. But working in the field, I've also seen them, I've seen 5-year-olds get lithium. And as a supervisor, you say, why are we giving a 5-year-old lithium? Because what they really need, they're abandoned pretty much. They're an orphan. They don't have anybody.
Right.
And you sit them in a facility, and they're supposed to sit here all day, and be normal.
And be still, right.
Yeah.
And be still and expect to be normal. And that is not the case.
Yeah, in the game of mental health, there's definitely a game, and there's some great people and whatnot. Like in everything, people were gonna say, "Wow, you guys went all over the board with this," but this is what happens when you have someone who is multifaceted, an entrepreneur. This is entrepreneur thinking. We always ask our guests, is there a community give back that you're doing or that you want to do? And I just think this is a great time to ask that for you. Is there anything that, you want to provide in mental health that, maybe mental health to NASCAR or to music or whatnot? Anything that you're doing or want to do?
Absolutely. I want to start a charity. It's one, being able to get further assistance, obtaining further knowledge about it, not just, going off on a tangent, because sometimes you can hurt, a movement by not being fully prepared, fully knowledgeable about it. So it requires more research, but definitely making mental health a priority within our culture, and that it does not have the stigmatism that it used to have. Same thing with sexual assault. There's a lot of sexual assaults that happen within our culture that go not spoken about. It's like it's swept underneath the rug. And then that child or that person will act out their entire life because they have experienced some type of trauma that's never been addressed. So right now I'm looking at different options, but mental health will definitely be one of the components that I definitely will work on and speak about once I feel that I've obtained enough knowledge to be able to communicate it to the masses.
Okay. Because you working in the jail system, you've probably, I'm sure, seen people, once they do get their medication or they get some type of structure, they change, and it's like, okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I'm one that does not feel that medication is the key to everything. When I was starting my journey with one of my children, it was medication after medication after medication. And I felt like you changing the medication so quickly, how do we know if it's even going to work? How do we even know that it's working? As soon as there's a behavior that is totally unacceptable to them, without finding out where's this behavior coming from, it's, hey, let's change the medication. And I'm just not an advocate for it. I feel like let's get down to the core problem and work our way up from there. At least we know what the baseline is, then we can work forward from there. Not just, throwing medication on top of it to suppress action, and the core issue is still there. So, like I said, for me, it is, obtaining more knowledge and doing more research before I will speak publicly about it, because I think it's something that we need to take that dark veil off of. And if our children could just get the right type of support, I think they would be a lot more productive and people would be able to understand them a lot more, because you'd be surprised at how many people that, how many inmates have experienced some type of trauma as a child and they've never had any type of assistance with it.
Yeah, no, that's true. For children, you have to replace whatever negative with the positive. And working
Mm-hmm.
in that's the system. We would take kids. I would take kids to BET, which was putting your job on the line. Because if anything happened going from Massachusetts to New York, it's on you and you get
Mm-hmm.
fired. But never had a problem taking kids to hockey games, walking down the street in Springfield, Mass, and taking them to hockey games if they were, the ones who are on good behavior on your off time. Not
Mm-hmm.
to, give all these. I don't need the credit, but it was like we never had a problem because they were just kids, and you have to.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the programs have been cut. We know parenting seems to at one point decline. I know so many great parents. I'm like, I just, I don't know. Now with, parents might be fighting, but with their children, I think more men want to be involved because so many men weren't involved and you don't want to pass that on. But,
Yes, you break the cycle. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so I even see, the real goons and goblins like, hey, but I take care of my kids. And, I make sure.
Right, exactly. They have a warm side when it comes to their babies. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But there's so many contributing factors. I have a teenager that basically is trying to give me a run for my money. But I have to let them know there's only one boss in this house, and it is not true. And working, color within the lines. I'll put it that way. Because it's not the day and age we grew up in. You got to color within the lines of society now. But even with that, just trying to find some type of assistance and trying to get them on the straight and narrow path. And there's so many outside influences, and it's like it's difficult. It's very difficult.
And I think
Difficult.
your life is a proven. I'm going to take the audience through a journey that they may not know. The correctional facility, music, and NASCAR all have in common is drugs. There's a lot of money, drug money in NASCAR.
Yeah.
I have friends who race, and they say only if I would go become Randy Lanier or whatever, I could, really make it in this next race. Can you talk about in corrections, you stayed on the straight and narrow, music, straight and narrow, but you're always around the legal and the illegal. And then in NASCAR, can you see it as clear? Like, again, you meet these people,
No. I mean, look at what NASCAR was based on. It was running moonshine.
Yeah.
No, that I would say, whatever evils are there, they are well covered and dressed up nicely. They present very well. So no, I don't see that there. Of course, you've had drivers and pit crew members. I mean, Brian France had an issue with his substance abuse. So no, it's dressed nicely. I'll say that. The music industry, if you're not involved in some type of, and it depends on what genre of music you're involved in, but typical in hip hop, if you're not like the dude on the corner, if you don't present like the guy on the corner, nobody wants to listen to you because they feel like you're not relatable. Corrections, I mean, the jails are built because of negative behavior. So,
but
like I said, if you're looking for trouble, you can find it in anything that you do. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
But it speaks a lot to your character because it's not necessarily as the talent, but behind the scenes. Labels have been built on drug money. NASCAR teams built on drug money. Correctional officers, I had mentioned the Gary Hayward book.
Oh, yeah.
He talked about how he went from ashy to, somewhat classy. And it was, I didn't have much going for me. And here I go. and even inside. So it shows if you can be disciplined in one thing, you can be disciplined in all things. And you've definitely shown that discipline. And so that's a book in itself, how to be disciplined. And you have, you know, the corrections, the music in the middle, and then the NASCAR, and have you in all those things. So in the studio, in your uniform, and in your car or by your cars, that's a book in itself. So you have the books because you have the covers because you've lived the life.
For me, my motivation was always my children are watching. I didn't give two hoots about anybody else. It was about my children and showing them the right way to do things. Now, what they do once they get grown is on them. But as far as my role as a mother is to teach them and to nurture them and to prepare them for life outside of my home. And that has always been my focus, always, no matter what. You know, I was a top earner in my facility, and I would make it a point to come home, even if it was just to cook dinner, because I lived almost 2 hours from my jail. Even if it was just to come home, take a shower, and cook dinner, I came home and did what I needed to do, made sure that my presence was around my children. And when they got out of line, they got to see another side to their mother. Because before I let them correct my children, I'm going to correct my children because it is my responsibility. And I'm very proud of the way my children have grown up. Very proud of them. You know, of course, they had little hiccups because, you know, they get influenced by their little friends, but they knew their mama was cuckoo crazy and she was not playing with them.
And will the TV show be more of following you around? How scripted is it? And when will we be able to see it?
I don't believe in scripted. I mean, of course, you're going to have a summarized day, you know, but what happens will be a true bird's eye of what, you know, it'll be the highs, the lows, the almost is, the achievements, you know, what my life looks like trying to break into this sport and be successful in this sport, maintain my morals and scruples when, you know, trying to create opportunities within this sport, and just showing, you know, how to structure a business. And, you know, I didn't go to the Wharton School of Business. I wish I had. But even still, you know, some of the most successful people in this world do not have a college education. They had a vision. They created a plan. They executed. And most likely than anything else, they believed in God. They had faith that they were on the right path and they weren't going to give up. They had determination and they stuck to it until it came to fruition. And that's exactly where I am. I get beat up a lot. You know, people are like, what took you so long? 2019 was extremely challenging for us. One, because we were scheduled to do a show with a different production company, and they wanted us to have everything on reserve for them. You know, they wanted to film the first race. They wanted to do this. They wanted to do that. And we sat there, we waited for them, and they had some internal issues. And then my father fell and broke his hip. And if anybody knows a parent breaking a hip after a certain age, like, it can be a life and death situation. And there's no medical reason for it. You know, my dad healed perfectly after his surgery, but I saw such a sharp decline in my dad. It's like, it was hard for me to leave him for even a couple of hours to even try to conduct business, because my dad took such a turn for the worse while he was recuperating. And then trying to really protect my assets and, you know, navigate through what I was going through legally with this production company that I had signed up to. That was one of the times I wish that I did not have a bona fide contract, because it held me up, and I lost an entire season behind it. By the time I got out of that situation, we were looking at July, which meant that I would again have to finance the race myself, which I could have. Thinking back at, you know, looking back at it in hindsight, I probably should have, but I felt like it was the end of the season and we do much better by hitting the ground running the beginning of 2020. It made me a much better businesswoman, a more astute owner. I have much better relationships than I had before. And it gave NASCAR and their fan base a chance to see that I'm here for the long haul. I could be the last kid on the block, the bottom of the totem pole, but I'm not going to give up.
Now, when you go into these different things, like going into NASCAR and then going into TV, I just came back a couple weeks ago from NAPI, which is the National Association of Television Program Executives.
Mm-hmm.
Briefly talk with Byron Allen, talk with so many great people.
Oh my God, Byron's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you then say, okay, we're going to go in this, I'm going to become a student and try to master this? Or do you say, let me go grab a consultant in this area, like in NASCAR or TV, or a mentor, and say, okay, I got my mentor, got my coach, whatever you want to call it. What is your, formula for jumping into?
So for me, it's always research. For me, I always want to not necessarily not rely on my support staff. Of course, I have mentors that have been in the business 40 years, 60 years, people that have better relationships with the vendors than I do. I am the new kid on the block. NASCAR is a very lucrative business, and it is a generational sport. And there are a lot of relationships that have been forged over decades. Unfortunately, within NASCAR, you have to go to your competitors to get your equipment, which makes no sense to me, but I didn't write the rule book. So, of course, I need to have the support staff, but I don't just rely on them. I'm not going to be the handicapped person at the table when I'm sitting at the head of the table. I need to know just as much or have a good understanding of what it is that I'm involved in, how to execute it properly. Okay. I'm not allowed the opportunity to make the same mistakes as somebody else, as one of my other counterparts.
Got you. And it's expensive for every mistake. And that's something
very expensive.
And that's why I asked that question, because I want we talk all the time. People say, what do you do? And you say consulting, and they want to know more, but then and I'm sure you get this in your business, especially in music. People kind of might want to know what the price is for you. And they'll say, oh, that's expensive. Well, it's not expensive to those who can afford it. It's expensive to you because you're not the type of client that we want, because we don't want to take your last 2 pennies. We want someone who says, oh, we have to hire somebody, and you're the one we chose because for various reasons, whether they trust you, they like your vibe, they like, that you travel internationally and can push them in other markets. So it's one of those things. So I just, get a consultant, to not have those hiccups, because a lot of times now people say, oh, I want to get a mentor, but even mentorship costs, because that,
Yeah. Well, I had a mentor that put me into a situation with my first race. I was not privy to their conversation. I literally got a phone call that said, Melissa, we can run, the Daytona race seamlessly. We'll run it under your number, which that's what we had on paper. That's, and things got turned around literally last minute when money was spent and momentum was forward. And there was no time to be like, hold on, time out. Because one, my money was already spent. So, and it kind of almost set me up for failure. But again, that's where black and white comes into play. So when somebody tries to play out a scenario in the media and you're like, hold on a second, you must forget that I have receipts. And then it kind of quiets things down. You, as a woman, you don't want to come across as you're the crybaby, or you're stirring the pot, or you're the angry black woman. So sometimes you got to take it on the chin, for your business and to keep your reputation intact. But again, like I said, that's when that black and white is so important, because had I not had black and white and proof of what my relationship and my intentions were and what was presented to me and how my deal fell short of that, I probably would have been injured irreparably.
And people listening will say, wow, okay, she started it, I can do it. And they'll go try to do like a Google search and it will say, well, to start a NASCAR team, you need $20 million and you need 3 cars. So you need $60 million
No.
budget and all these things. Can you kind of demystify what you really need besides hard work, dedication, but what do you need? Where do you start?
Relationships will save you a ton of money. I will say that. That's where your mentors and your consultants come in. Have I spent a lot of money? I've spent more money than I actually knew I had. But I will say relationships with any business, relationship can save you a great deal of money. NASCAR is not the type of business industry that you can barter services, typically. Though I did hear of a very unique situation that occurred last year. But not, it's a cash carry business, period. Everybody, I don't care how big they are, everybody's trying to keep the lights on. So that tends to motivate people to do certain things that are not ethical. I will say that. And being knowledgeable and doing your research and knowing what is expected of you, what is required of you, what is typical industry-wise will save you a lot of heartache. So with me, I am challenged more so than probably any owner because they expect me not to know. They expect me not to be vested in my craft. And I make it a point to learn as much about the industry as I can because I will get all kind of trick questions. I will encounter people that are, I'll just be very frank, just snakes in the grass, and you need to know how to maneuver over them without getting bit.
Wow.
But the sport itself is amazing. It's exhilarating. I mean, it has a physical component to it that not many, if you have never been to a race, you will not understand unless you've been there. But it's typical of any business. You have good people and you have bad people. You have people that are there to make money and take advantage of the weaker. And you have people that are there because they want to see you in the sport and extend a hand and pray that when they extend that hand to you, you'll pay it forward to somebody else. You'll respect the opportunity and pay it forward to somebody else. But it definitely comes with patience in the process. You have to be patient while you're going through the process. It is not an overnight success. There is no such thing as an overnight success. I don't care what anybody says. When you look at anybody that is successful, it took them time. It took them time. It was through trial and error. They walked through some brimstone, like they have been through the fires and learned from their mistakes and learned not to make them again or put some things in place to protect them and their future self. I'll say that. But it's hard work. It's very, very hard work. And that's why I feel like I'm not ready to write the book just yet.
Okay. And we'll push you a later date to say, we want the book, have the internet. with going through all that. And do you think that being in NASCAR that they have been friendly to you? Have you got open arms from, fellow teams and wanted to help out?
No, absolutely not. No. And I don't expect to. I'm not there to create problems. I'm there to add value to it and usher in a new demographic that has never truly been represented in NASCAR to be a true face for diversity and inclusion in the sport. So as far as having open arms and hugs and kumbaya, no, I did not experience that. Have people going out their way to be mean-spirited to me? No, I have not experienced that either. It's kind of a let's wait and see what she does, you know. Long as she doesn't get in my way or interfere with my money, I don't have a problem or whatever. But I'm not there for that. I'm there to be a successful team and be competitive and to build a brand that is undeniable and to leave a legacy, a true legacy for my children, for others that want to be involved in the sport to have a means, a path to come into the sport and know that this bar was raised to this point. Now it's your responsibility coming into the sport to raise it higher and take it beyond what was built in the foundation.
I think the part that I really loved when I was researching on you were, it was talking about how you were trying to take a driver at one point and they were trying to do music. I think she had a good voice. Can we please see an E² album that, you know, that you're bringing drivers into the studio? I love the double dip concept just because it's part of I love
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I may have to revisit that. That is a great idea. Yes, she did have a phenomenal voice. So yeah, that could be on the horizon. It could.
And even if you bring back your music career, start dancing again, and you know, you are driving in the car, and I'm going to tell you, and you're going to think
the most I can promise you is that I will be driving. I don't know about the dancing part.
No, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why this would work right now, and this is the perfect time. If we had the video, you're in the car, it's going cutting scenes, all that. You're in the studio, but I think it was in 2000, NASCAR went to South Africa, and now Afro pop is popping, and then to mix it with that flair. And there's African artists all through America, and it will be a natural fit. Like, you know, maybe they don't say, oh, we want you here, but in South Africa, they say, you got to come, and this artist is going to come, you know, support and push. Not that that helps you win races, because you still got to be able to drive, but I'm thinking of the total overall brand. There's been plenty of brands in life that they weren't the best product, but they had the best marketing. I'm not going to say Coke or Pepsi, but, you know, you can pick. Starbucks isn't the best coffee in the world, but people go to Starbucks all day. So I could see it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. You know, have a conversation afterwards.
No, we definitely will, because what she doesn't know, she's going to be talked about today. And I'm going to say, hey, tell this artist, yeah, she can do the steps, whatnot. So we're going to have, we're definitely going to have a conversation. Yeah, I am. I admit that. So you guys have gotten the game from Melissa. I'm just happy that she came. She did this interview. I hope to get her on some client shows as well, so she can keep inspiring. So when you see her on the talk series and she's next to Les Brown, and, you know, she's opening for him or he's opening for her, whichever way.
Oh, my God, I was supposed to take one of his classes. Yeah.
I'm telling you, this is what I do. So it's a God-given gift. But I thank you for coming on, and I thank everyone for listening. And like, share, subscribe, keep popping the podcast and the YouTube. Thank you, Miss Melissa.
Thank you so much for being patient with me